Good evening, everyone. It's the host, Dan the Man, and here to tell you all my 13th chapter of Pirates of the Caribbean, The Final Voyage. Are y'all ready? Sit back and relax, and let's get started. Chapter 13, The Final Battle. It has begun. After everything that everyone has been through, the battle for the one last wish from the goddess Genesha has begun. Each different pirate crew are all fighting in 3 different sections. Davy Jones' sea monster crew, Angelica's zombie crew, and Jack Sparrow's crew. All 3 of them fighting each other. Davy Jones has his sights towards Jack and the cauldron, but is blocked by Will Turner, and they both fight. Angelica also has her sights on Jack and the cauldron, but is attacked by Henry, and both of them fight. Davy Jones and Will fought on for a while, until Davy Jones managed to get the upper hand and defeated Will. And just before Will got up and was ready to fight again, Davy Jones vanished. And then he looked around and saw that Henry has just been defeated by Angelica, and she was just about to kill him until he showed up and knocked her out cold with a skull that he found close to his feet. He helped his son up, and then he asked him if he was okay. Henry replied, "Yes, I am fine, father." And then Will looked around, and then he noticed Elizabeth Karina chained into the entrance of the pillar with a few zombies heading towards them. And then he looked at Henry and said, "Let's go save your mother and Karina." As they both left, Angelica has woken up from her short slumber, and then she noticed there's a giant chain behind the fountain, the pillar, and the black statue. She gave a smirk, put her sword away, and started to climb up. As the battle started to get more intense, with zombies eating Davy Jones's crew alive, and each of Davy Jones' crew with unique water-based powers defeating each horde of zombies, Red looked at Jack, grabbed him on the shoulders, and then said, "It's now or never, Jack. We got to make that wish, you and me, together." And then they both heard Gibbs shouting, who was probably overhearing their discussion, and shouted, "Aye, she's right, Jack. Make the wish. We'll keep all these guys distracted. You guys can do it." And then Jack stood firm and said, "Aye, together." Red smiled, and she and Jack both held hands as Red was holding the journal, stand close to the cauldron, and it was starting to say the enchantment. "Genesha, goddess of wishes, we humbly beseech you to come forth so we can make..." But the enchantment was interrupted as they heard crumbling in front of them. They both looked up and couldn't see anything at first, thanks to the fountain. And then, at pure fury, Angelica busted out, and she was gonna slice Jack until Red got in the way, stood by in front of her, and both of the women fell and stumbled down the wooden steps into the slimy pavement. Luckily, Red dropped the journal, and Jack picked it up, and with a wary look, he saw that Red and Angelica were fighting. With one strong hit, Red shouted to Jack, saying, "Looks like you need to do this on your own, brother. I'll be right behind you. I'll keep her busy. Make the wish, Jack." As both women continued on fighting, Davy Jones pushed Jack a few feet away from the cauldron, and hanging onto the edge, Jack hoisted himself up before he could fall. He grabbed his sword, and he and Davy Jones fought. The fight is something similar, like from the 3rd film, but entirely different, because as Jack stabbed his sword into Davy Jones' chest, he couldn't get it out. It was like it was stuck right into him. Then Davy Jones pushed Jack again, and with much fright, Jack ran for his life, with Davy Jones hot on his tail. Meanwhile, Elizabeth and Karina were still struggling to get free, as the 3 zombies were coming closer to them with hungry-looking eyes, with drooling mouths. As both Elizabeth and Karina thought they saw their last, Will and Henry came to the rescue and killed the zombies. Then they unchained and ungagged Elizabeth and Karina, and all 4 of them hugged. Breathing shakily, with tears, Elizabeth said, "We thought we'd never see you again. We thought you were killed on the surface." Will looked at her face, wiped away her tears. With a calm voice, he said, "No, of course not. You're the love of my life. I will never abandon you." Elizabeth smiled, and both of them kissed. And Henry and Karina did the same. If with much of a hurry, Henry said to Karina, "Karina, I know this is like a very bad time to ask you right now, but just in case we don't make it out of this alive, I was wondering." He then bended down on one knee, grabbed her hand, and then said, "Will you marry me, Karina Smith?" Still wiping away her tears from her face and now crying in happiness, Karina replied yes. Henry held her up, twirled her around, and both of them kissed. And just when he was about to tell his father and mother the news, Will was attacked by Scarface. Will managed to knock Scarface off balance for a moment, and then he looked at Henry and shouted, "Keep your mother Karina safe. I'll keep this." And then Scarface attacked again, and the fight was starting to get a lot more intense. And then Will managed to pull a move and slice Scarface's arm off. Yelling in pain and growling in anger, Scarface's face was starting to glow bright red, and then his amputated arm was glowing, forming a kinetic energy that was in the shape of an arm. And then, before he realized what happened next, Will was blasted by Scarface's arm, and he flew across the room and crash landed on his back on the temple walls, and he stumbled back onto the ground. Angelica and Red were still fighting each other until Angelica managed to pull a move, thanks by her father. As Red was trying to get away, Angelica laughed and said, "You know, I never knew Jack has a sister. Pity that you came all this way for nothing." And just when she was about to stab her, Red grabbed a skeleton and thrown it at Angelica. And then Red pounced at Angelica and knocked her out cold. Wiping off her bloody lip, Red stood up and said, "I wouldn't count on it." Hearing Jack yelling, Red looked up and saw that Davy Jones was still chasing Jack and trying to kill him, with Jack leaving without any weapon. Red was just about to go up until Angelica grabbed her by the foot and threw her into the lake, and Red vanished. Meanwhile, Will, struggling to get up, was in immense pain as Scarface was slowly heading towards him. He hoisted Will up on his throat, pushed him against the wall, and then he said, "I would have gave you thanks for cutting off my arm, because every time someone cuts pieces of my body, I get some unique power, thanks to my captain, Angelica. I call this the burning touch, and now you're going to feel the pain." Scarface put his red glowing arm onto Will's chest, burning him, and Will was shouting in pain. Will tried to bust free, but Scarface's hold was too strong and the burning was too much. Laughing in delight, Scarface whispered, "As soon as I finish you here, I will kill off your wife, your boy, and the other woman, and none of you will ever see daylight ever again." Then he heard a voice behind him that said, "Let go of my father!" And just before he could turn around, he was knocked out cold by Henry, holding on into an oar. Henry helped his father to his feet, and then Henry asked, "Are you okay, father?" Will gave a smile to his son and said, "Yes, I'm fine." Elizabeth and Karina then came, and both hugged the men again, and then they looked around as they see that the fight is starting to get a lot more intense than ever before. Then Henry replied, "We need to come up with a plan, father." Will stood silent for a moment, and then he came up with an idea. And then he said, "I have a plan. Follow me." He, Henry, Elizabeth, and Karina vanished into the waterfall where they came from before and vanished. Meanwhile, Jack is still running for his life from Davy Jones, and Davy Jones has keep missing him from every angle. Laughing, Davy Jones said, "You're a coward, Jack. For the first time I met you, you have always been a failure. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be who you are today." Swinging for dear life and was coming towards Davy Jones, Jack grabbed his pistol just in the nick of time, and fired on Davy Jones's face. Davy Jones was yelling in pain and put his hands on his face, and then Jack was swinging a lot harder, and he managed to use all his might to knock Davy Jones off the sides of the cauldron. As Davy Jones crashed ran onto the temple walls, debris was coming down on top of him. He vanished. Jack stood up with enthusiasm, and just as he was about to go to the cauldron again with the journal in his hand, he felt a sensational pain. He looked on his chest, and there was blood busting out. He looked around to see what was happening, and then he saw Angelica, holding a voodoo doll. Laughing in delight, Angelica said, "I've been saving this for such a special occasion, Jack. And right now, seeing you like this is a special occasion. It's a real pleasure to give you such horrible, immense pain after what you have done to me. You took away my father, you stranded me on an island, and you betrayed me and used me numerous times. We couldn't have been perfect together, Jack, you and I. And to be quite honest, I actually did love you, but you had to ruin everything. Why?" Trying to get up, Jack replied, "Because your father was going to let you die. He didn't care about you. I sacrificed him for you. I know I hurt you back then, Angelica, and I was wrong, and you were right. I was a different man back then. I know you, Angelica. You don't have to do this." Pushing the little dagger into the doll a lot harder, Jack stopped talking and continued yelling in pain. And then she came close to Jack and said, "This is me, Jack." And just before she could finish the job, Red came to the rescue. She grabbed a chain, the one that Jack was holding on earlier, wrapped it around Angelica's foot, and tossed her off balance, and she stumbled again down the stairs. And just before it could get a lot worse, she grabbed the doll, took the dagger off, and Jack was feeling a lot better. Red helped Jack up, and with a horrifying, worried face, she asked, "Are you okay, Jack? Look at me, Jack. Are you okay?" Breathing heavily, Jack smiled and said, I'm okay." And then, all of a sudden, there were explosions. Jack and Red to see that where it was coming from, and it was Will, Henry, Elizabeth, and Karina, who were holding a whole crate full of dynamite, of grenades. They threw them each at the zombies and at Davy Jones's crew, including the giant crew member with the mustache and blue glowing arms, a giant crab-like crew member with crab-like arms, and a small crew member with a shark-like fin and with a chain, a blue water-like chain with 2 daggers attached to it. Then Gibbs and the others joined them and were throwing dynamite each at the different crew members, including Angelica's zombies, and the battle seems to be more successful. And then Ed heard another voice coming up from behind them. They both looked in the other direction and saw that Angelica was there. And then they started to notice that she was signing the enchantment, but in an unknown language that they both couldn't understand. And then all of a sudden, her eyes were turning black. And then she started to yell in immense pain as like anything she has never felt before. And then out of nowhere, a ghostly figure of Blackbeard was appearing from the sky. And then on the opposite side of him, Ward Cuthbert Beckett showed up, also in the ghostly-like form. And then lastly, on the other side, Salazar showed up, also in a ghostly form. Each of the 3 foes that Jack has encountered came towards them. Salazar was the first one to speak up and said, "Hola, Jack Sparrow." Puzzled, Jack asked, "What is going on?" Then Red looked at Angelica, who was still yelling in pain, and then she started to see that her life force was being taken away. And then Red started to realize what was going on. She must be using one of her own enchantments to bring back not only her father, but some of your other foes that you have counted before, and it's taken away her life force. Finally standing up, Jack said, "We gotta stop it. Come on, let's go help her." Both of them grabbed Angelica and were starting to pull her away from the cauldron as it was still draining her life force. They heard the voice of Blackbeard, who said, "Angelica, my darling, you wasted your whole life to bring me back. And look at you. The cauldron is draining away your life force, who is bringing us, all three of us, back to life." And then Lord Beckett butt in and said, "It's nothing personal, Jack. It is just certainly good business." Both Jack and Red looked in horror as each of the three foes was starting to get bodily, human-like forms. And with one last tug, Red and Jack pulled Angelica away from the cauldron, and Angelica was knocked out. Jack looked at Angelica, trying to wake her up, and then her body was starting to get better. And then they heard shouting. They looked to see where it was coming from, and Salazar, Blackbeard, and Beckett were fading away. And then they vanished. Then Red gave the journal to Jack, and breathing heavily, Red said, "Go make that wish." But Jack was still worried over Angelica, and then Red assured him that she would look after her. Jack walked up to the stairs, opened the journal, and was ready to say the enchantment. And that is the end of Pirates of the Caribbean, The Final Voyage, Chapter 13. What do you guys think of it so far? Do you like it? And how do you think this story will end? Please let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe for more notifications of videos, shorts, and posts in the future. And also to like my previous videos, shorts, and posts that I've done in the past. Also to share to your friends and families and help me reach 100 or more subscribers. Hope you have a good, splendid day. God bless.